our speaker. Jeff Kleinschmidt is, of course, a co-founder of ReProjects along with Brian Sweet, and he is also co-vice president of our service team. So, Jeff?
Thank you, Jim. Mark Twain is quoted as saying, "Age is an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter." Today, I have the pleasure of introducing two speakers on our topic, age-friendly workplaces and intergenerational relationships. First, Matt Isola, founder of Generation Exchange. Matt is a native of the San Francisco Bay Area and has a passion for technology and helping others reach their full potential. After coaching a 96-year-old friend on how to use an iPad, Matt used the inspiration to start Generation Exchange, an organization that hosts free workshops pairing college students with older adults looking for answers about everyday technology devices. Matt has a master's in strategic communication and design from the University of Colorado and is also a fellow Club 31 Rotarian. Second is Karen Brown, CEO of iAging. Karen is a native of Montana and is a thought leader in technology and innovations, focusing on products, services, and policy that improves the lives of older adults. In her role as CEO of iAging and the ambassador of the Aging 2.0 Denver chapter, she is working with organizations across the globe who are tackling the challenges of aging. Karen has a geology degree from the University of Montana, an environmental science and engineering degree from the Colorado School of Mines, and an MBA in finance from the University of Colorado. Karen is first up, so please join me in welcoming Karen Brown.
And I am going to use this just to time myself so that we're on target. That's permissible. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much. In 2018, I had an opportunity to meet Patricia, Joe, and Dave. Patricia came up to me after a presentation. She was 40 years old. Said, "I'm a teacher. I took 5 years off to care for my kids, and I'm now ready to get back into the workplace, but I'm having some trouble. Like, I'm not able to find a job." And a friend of mine told me, "Well, you're 40. You're older." At another presentation, Joe came up to me. He was 58 years old and shared with me that he'd been laid off. The companies had merged. And the surviving company, really, it was the acquirer that was the winner. And about 15% of his original company had been laid off. He'd been looking for work for 6 months. Had several interviews, but really wasn't connecting and finding work. And he had to work. He says, "I'm 58. I need that money for my retirement." And then David, I thought this was most interesting. He's 74 years old, had worked at a company 28 years, and chose to retire. Said, "You know what? Wonderful career there, but I'm ready to move on. I really want to work in a company where I'm doing something really important to society. I don't need to make a lot of money. I just want to connect and really be engaged on a social issue." So what we found in our presentations across the state of Colorado, more than 4 dozen in 2018, was as we talked about changing the narrative about how we talk, treat, and act towards older people, most of the conversation after our meetings was about how do I stay connected and engaged in the workplace. So we decided that we would actually do a little bit of homework, and what we provided for you on your chair was a little summary sheet of some of the advantages of employing older workers and talking a little bit about dispelling some of the myths. I guess I could just use these to forward it. When we're talking about age-friendly, we're really talking about an accessible, welcoming, and accommodating environment, really leveraging the strengths of all the different ages in the workplace. When we're talking about age-friendly, we think about a flexible schedule. You know, I read a book called Remix, and it's written by a woman who's an expert in intergenerational workplaces. And she says, you know, the millennials, they get this identification that they're the ones that really want this flexible thing. They want the flexible workplace. And she goes, you know, I deal with every generation on a flexible schedule. That's not a millennial thing. That's a people thing. Everybody wants flexibility. We just didn't have it when we got started in the workplace, so that's the difference. But you can see pictures here of 3 different scenarios. A young woman who's actually working, she's allowed to work from home for a day or 2 a week so she can do her writing without interference. Tom and Nancy, who just had a baby, And their companies have said, you know, we definitely want to be working with you in a flexible way so that you're able to stay with us and make this transition in your life. And then the older person, I actually say that really could be me, because when you are caring for aging relatives or grandchildren or even a spouse, you need that flexible schedule. When we talk about intergenerational, you can see the picture of the workplace, and we probably have every age present there. Does that mean it's intergenerational? From our perspective, that's a step in the right direction, but we really see intergenerational as a truly conscious decision to engage all ages, because it brings great diversity to your products and your services. Anybody here know Jean Galloway or heard of Jean Galloway? A couple of hands. Yeah, I see about a dozen, maybe a dozen and a half hands. Jean actually has her own company. She was an anchor at Channel 9 News for a long period of time, started her own company. I'm going to guess she's close to 85, still very active in the workforce. She was quoted in the Denver Post in an article talking about how important it is to her that through her board, through her consultants, and through her employees, that she has as many generations as possible so that she can deliver the best possible service and product to her customers. Now, this is a graph, and this is really why we're talking about this issue. You can see that this is taken from the US Census, and the axis on the left is from birth to 85. Across the bottom is millions of people, and the colors are male or female. On the 1960 chart, you can see it's really basically a pyramid, lots of younger people. And on your little handout, you can see that chart as well. We didn't have near the health system that we have today, so we actually saw a lot of reduction, a lot of loss of life, all the way up to 25, then a little bit of a tapering, and then again, not near the longevity we have today. If you fast forward to 2016, 40 years from today, to 2060, you can see that we've changed from a pyramid to a pillar. We have far fewer younger people and pretty much equal numbers of all populations. So that really is changing what we describe as the talent pipeline. We actually talk about the talent pipeline now as being everything from 16 to 85 and beyond. Some of you in the room may be surprised to hear that there are more than 250,000 people 85 or over, still working in the workforce, and a good number of them still full-time. So a part of the reason that this has all changed is we're seeing a real big shift in the birth rate. In the last 32 years, every year except for a little blip during the recession, or the Great Recession 2007, 2008, we've seen a reduction in birth. To replace our population in the US, it takes 2.1 births per young married person or a woman. And here in Colorado, we're replacing people at the rate of 1.6. While China might have mandated years ago that there would be one child per couple, Colorado seems to be heading that direction by choice, simply because young couples are deciding that they're going to wait a long time before they have kids. And when they have children, they're making a decision about, you know, I'm going to have one, maybe I'll have two. So for anybody who's an employer, what you've had in the past is being altered completely. Anybody heard the term longevity economy? Longevity economy. Matt, you haven't heard? Okay, good. There should be at least two hands here. It's really a term coined by AARP, and they did a big study in 2016 looking at the economic value of the 50-plus population. I mean, just across the U.S., that number is 7.6 trillion. Here in Colorado, the number is something like 200 million. But for the 50-plus population, that's a third of the state population. It contributes 42% of our gross domestic product, and it's about a half of all people employed in the state of Colorado. So we have a lot of older people in the state employed. And in Colorado, we are the third fastest growing population of 65-year-olds in the United States. Obviously, we have some challenges. You know, the unemployment rate here in the state is something like 2.4, 2.5%. We have a lot of older people looking at trying to stay engaged and connected to the workforce in some capacity. And so we really see this as a business opportunity to connect those two. The percentage of the labor force that's 55 or over from 1990 to 2030 has gone from 11% to 23%. But I think what's more interesting to me is the actual number of people participating in the workforce that are over 65. So from 2000 to 2018, we've gone from 12% to 24%. So nearly 1 in 4 in the workforce are 65 or older. There was a poll done in 2018, the Gallup poll, and they asked the question, this was about 1,000 people that they surveyed, how many of you anticipate working past 65? 41%. 41% said they anticipate working past 65. There was a second poll done by Transamerica. It was actually done in 2017, but a much broader audience. It was about 10,000 people asked the same question, how many anticipate working past 65? 65% said they plan to work past 65. Now, whether it's 41 or it's 65, I think the point is a lot of older people are intending to work longer, in part because they want the money for retirement, in part for social connection and engagement, and or for mental stimulation. So there's some clear benefits of mixed age teams, that reciprocal mentoring, it occurs all along the different generations, whether it's a Gen X, Y, Z, whether it's the boomer or the silent generation, there's great reciprocal mentoring. If you have a group or an environment where you have 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 60, 70, and 80, do you think you're going to have groupthink? Do you think that everyone's going to have the same perspective? Not likely. Highly, highly unlikely. IBM actually did a survey of all 4,000 of their offices, asking them, what do you think the value is of having an intergenerational team encompassing all the age groups? 85% responded saying the most critical component to having an intergenerational team is that it improves team problem solving and creativity. And this came across through every country and every office. And knowledge transfer is obviously very critical. I mean, my background's in the oil and gas industry. I can tell you that I worked certain bases for, I hate to say decades, but I did. But I know things about that basin and how we evolved it, what the policy was, you know, what the geology and how that has evolved. And being able to share that with the younger generation is just absolutely critical. All of this leads to productivity and profitability for not only the company, but for the individual. So what gets in the way of leveraging these benefits? It's that concept of zero-sum thinking. I actually like to couch it as it's either or. Either we keep the older people and we hire fewer of the younger people, or we get rid of the older people and we bring in the younger people. I propose that it's not either or, it's and. It's and. How do we bring in the younger people and keep access to the talent and the knowledge of the older person? There are some practices and policies that are rooted in the past. The normal retirement age, you know, it was 62, it's now 65. It'll shift a little bit. And the prime working age, the federal government says prime working age is 25 to 54. We think that's changing. Anybody recognize the year 1935, why that would be an important year, 1935? Absolutely. So this goes to policies rooted in the past. In 1935, when Social Security was created, they set retirement at 62. Makes perfect sense. The average man lived to 59.9. The average woman to 63.9. So more than half the people were dead before retirement. So if you actually had the opportunity to live another 5 years, you did go out and golf and you did fish and you connected with your grandkids and your family because you didn't have much time left. Today, we have decades beyond that, and a child born in 2017 could live to 103. If they retire at 65, that's 35 to 40 years of retirement. Just imagine. My own mom at 92 said, had I have known, I had any idea I would live to 92, I would have worked longer. Not for dad in the company, but I would have stayed connected and engaged. So common stereotypes. Older people cost too much, they're not willing to learn new things, their skills aren't up to date, and they won't stay around. Actually, they've done some research on the cost benefit. If you actually look at the costs of an older person. While they might make more money, you don't have to train them, and the amount of training that it might take to educate a younger person is significant. And sometimes you can't infuse 30 or 40 years of knowledge into that person. Are not willing to learn new things. AARP actually surveyed, and they found that for every 5 years that a person gets older, companies tend to invest less in their education. You don't have as many opportunities. So it's sort of that double-edged sword. It's like if you want them to be knowledgeable, you have to really invest in them as well. They're very willing and interested to learning, as Matt's going to share with us. Skills aren't up to date. While that may be true in some cases, the best way to really assess that is to do skills-based assessment. Check them, test them, and really be sure. I know we make assumptions in multiple directions. I mean, I can share with you that I worked with a millennial 2 years ago, and they're digital natives, right? So I said, I want you to do a social media campaign. I want it on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat. I want it everywhere. He looked at me kind of glazed and said, you know, I have LinkedIn, but it's kind of LinkedIn light. I've never been on Twitter. I've never been on Facebook or Instagram. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what? Did I get the only millennial who's not a digital native? But again, it goes to those assumptions. And they won't stick around. You know, one of the things AARP found too is that the average older person will stay around 4 times as long as a younger person. Not necessarily, you know, it's not a bad thing about younger people. They're going through huge transitions. They might be going through additional education, getting married, moving with a spouse to a different area, having kids. So they have more change in their life. So hiring older workers, obviously it addresses the talent shortage. You gain a competitive advantage. And really, there are people who vote with their dollars. So I'm part Chinese, I'm part Native American. And when I actually make decisions with my money, if I know somebody who is a Chinese company or a Native American company, I can tell you that I will frequent those places. Okay, so good. And so just know that people do look at the companies and figure out, you know, are you supporting my population? So obviously, we talked a little about investing in training of people of all ages, offering flexibility. Age in the diversity policy, only 8% of companies in the US actually even address age. Age identifiers. So Matt, I could actually interview with Matt, and Matt could not ask me, Karen, how old are you? But Matt could say, Karen, you know, I want you to go online and fill out this application. And then Matt would say, tell me when you graduated from high school. Well, obviously, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out exactly how old I am. So remove those, and then train HR managers in implicit bias. Implicit bias is that bias that we have that we're not even aware of, maybe because of culture or geography. I actually grew up in Montana, so I'm from the land of cowboys and Indians, like 7 Native American tribes, truly a lot of ranchers. My first trip to DC 30 years ago, I was like in shock. My cab driver didn't speak English or very little English. I didn't even know if I was going to get to the hotel. All the different languages, the different dress, the different cultures. It was really hard for me to even feel safe there. So it was a bias just based on what I was familiar with. So we need to help train people in that in general. And then skills-based assessment and reciprocal mentoring. I'm actually, that's the essence of my presentation. We do have, again, you have that sheet, and there's an evaluation card. If you'd fill that out too, I'd appreciate it. And then we'll take questions at the end of Matt's presentation.
There we go. All right, this is exciting. I have been talking to many of you about Generation Exchange in side conversations, so it's really cool to do it formally. So thank you to Karen, that was great. I also want to say thank you to Meryl, who is our photographer, our director of operations for Generation Exchange. She took all these amazing pictures and videos that you're about to see, so you don't just have to stare at me talking the whole time. So the reason that I'm here is because of this man right there. This is Ted Boyce. He was my grandfather's best friend, high school teacher in the Orinda School District of California for 60 years. It was one of those people that was always curious and like woke up trying to learn a new thing. For his 94th birthday, a former student of his bought him an iPad. I was there. He was thrilled, but he didn't know how to take it out of the box, let alone turn it on. So I decided to help him. Just gave him a crash course in the basics of what I know. We showed him FaceTime, which was incredible. Like, he didn't know that video chat existed, so it was literally like showing him magic. That experience really stuck with me. I've never really had that effect on a person before. I don't know when the last time any of you have like actually blown someone's mind, but it's a pretty cool feeling. And the other thing was, it took no effort. Like, I didn't have to try. It was just me learning, showing him something that I've grown up with that was second nature to me. So I left his house that day really inspired, because I knew there was more people like him. I knew there was more people like me. And that was really the inspiration for the first Generation Exchange workshop. So this is a picture of what a Generation Exchange workshop looks like. This is from our Boulder chapter. We hold technology workshops that help older adults become more comfortable with technology. We call them mentees. The workshops are free. The coaching is one-on-one, and there's no curriculum. So mentees bring in their own questions and their own devices. Each mentee is paired with a mentor. Mentors are, like Karen said, digital natives, like me, people who grew up with technology or who feel extremely comfortable with it. Mentees are who we call analog natives. So those of us who started using technology later. Just a question, do we have any analog natives in the room? The difference between a digital native and an analog native is actually pretty important for understanding the interactions that go on in Generation Exchange. Analog natives, for whatever reason, seem to attach their value in the world much more closely to what they know. And, you know, so that means I am a scientist, I am a doctor, I'm an artist, I'm a writer. And they're much less comfortable with things that they don't know. And that makes it difficult to learn something like technology, which is basically based on not knowing. Digital natives, myself, have grown up with the internet, and the internet is in more ways than less based on not knowing things, you know, sharing information. And so for digital natives, we are totally comfortable with not knowing. We actually do an exercise with the mentors to prepare them to work with their mentee. We say, okay, you really got to put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're going to work with here, right? So I tell them, imagine if you went through college without Google. And like, you look at their face and they actually have a hard time imagining that. And I do too. And so that's just representative of like the gap that there is, the difference in perspectives. So now I just want to show you a quick video that we put together. This is about a year old, but this is some videos of mentees who came to workshops, and just shows the kind of transformation that can take place on a technology level for mentees.
I got my first smartphone ever a few weeks ago, and it's not very intuitive to me.
I did not know how to use a phone, and I thought to myself I didn't care about learning phones or stuff like that in '79.
Computers, although I'm learning some things, still confuse me, make me angry, wonder what to do next.
The systems are evolving so fast that we can't stay up with it because we don't do it full time. And in one way,
It's hard, you know, being of a certain age and feeling behind the times.
I'm so unconfident of myself.
Anytime you're starting something new, it's tough and it's hard. There's always lots of questions, but then, especially if you're trying to learn something that seems like everyone around you already knows, then it can be really embarrassing to go and seek out help. When in reality, there's no reason to feel embarrassed because everyone had to do that.
so one-on-one, and one you learn about the younger person, and have them work with you and go back over it a couple times as mentioned.
I got to do what I wanted to do in terms of the computer, and I got to know some young people.
And this is such a great environment to be paired with someone else who's not judging me, and I don't have to be embarrassed that I'm not as savvy as I would like to be, or as my companion is sitting next to me.
It helped me feel more confident about trying something that I hadn't tried before.
You walk into Apple, you get 15 minutes, and there's so many stuff that you can throw away, come back in 3 months. There's more.
Now that I've learned it, I'm having a good time with it. I think the technology is amazing. And so I'm sorry I didn't learn it years ago. I have 5 daughters and 10 grandchildren. So I've been texting to them, and been texting back, and they're kind of amazed. And Shaba knows this now.
We're ready to learn something new, and it fills in some of the holes in my ability to use, in this case, the iPad.
Did she tell you she got a new iPad? Love the opportunity to get help.
There are no dumb questions. I think it's a very gentle atmosphere to take you into the unknown, so I like that.
So I was speaking at DU actually about Generation Exchange, which is really fun. And one of the people that was speaking with me was Associate Dean at the DU Graduate School of Social Work. And she had this to say: our society has never faced the size, complexity, or diversity of our current aging population. She went on to say that we need services that promote quality of life and well-being for older adults. Now, I don't know about you, but I have never met an older adult. I don't know anybody who identifies as an older adult, so I think it's always kind of a weird term to use. But at this time, we really thought, so this video was made a year ago. At this time in the evolution of what we're doing, we really did think what we were creating was a technology solution for older adults. But then we started seeing connections between mentors and mentees that went way past technology. We started hearing from the mentors that they really treasured their time with their mentees. We started interviewing them one-on-one. We sat down with mentors and were surprised to hear that consistently they said they felt like they got more out of the experience than the person that they were helping. So we asked, why? They said things like, Richard loves learning new things. He makes me want to learn new things too. Every time I come, I realize how much I want to continue studying to be a teacher. And then we noticed something even more surprising. Mentors were signing up for workshops faster than mentees, a lot faster. Our email list after 1 year at CU had 375 mentors and 180 mentees. So why? Well, we're still trying to figure that out. But I think part of what happened is that mentors were surprised when they got to workshops. Some of them were expecting, vulnerable people in need of assistance. But instead they found rabbis, astrophysicists, writers, global business leaders, and life coaches. And these people were so grateful for their help that they were receiving that they turned to the students, the mentors, and wanted to help them with whatever they needed help with. So I started doing some more research. You've heard probably some things about loneliness and aging. They say loneliness can be as detrimental to your health as a pack of cigarettes as you get older. It turns out that older adults are actually the second loneliest group in America. And the first is 16 to 24-year-olds. 40% feel lonely sometimes or a lot of the time. So we started asking mentors in our feedback forms at the workshops, how often do you interact with people that are over 40 years older than you when you're not forced to, so not for work or school? And the results basically said that they didn't get many interactions. Here's some of the things they said. I'm a college student and tend to stay in my college bubble surrounded by other 20-somethings. There's a limited opportunity to do so. I'm mostly surrounded by college students, so it is nice to step out of that bubble. I'm not involved in many communities outside of my age group. There's just not many opportunities in day-to-day. I just moved to Boulder for one, and I get really shy when in public. So what we really started realizing is that technology coaching was just the vehicle for intergenerational connection, and that there really was a gap between generations. And that gap had consequences, especially for the young people, for us. Here's what one mentor had to say about that.
People don't just stop contributing to society once you reach your 70s. You still have tons of stuff you can do, but for some reason nowadays we stop interacting with people. And that shouldn't be the case, because just because you're in your 70s doesn't mean you can't be a software engineer. You know, there's no rule that says you can't.
So we really took aging and reframed it from a problem to be solved to a resource that was willing and able to support and give back to younger generations and to society. And my generation really needs that wisdom. Another mentor said, at one point while working with my mentee, I realized I was speaking to someone who in some way or another had experienced everything that I will ever go through. So we believe these things to be true. One, there's a gap, there's an isolating gap between generations, and many things contribute to it. Stereotypes, assumptions, tech literacy. But there's also a desire on both sides to close it. I haven't met any 20-year-olds that are purposely avoiding everybody over the age of 60 or 50, and vice versa. There's just not that many opportunities to come together and meet people, especially when you're on the ends of the spectrum. So what we do in the workshops is a pretty cool thing. We flip the roles of mentees and mentors. So about an hour and a half in, after they've been working together, sharing technology, we say, I get on the mic and say, okay, mentors, you've been helping with your mentee with tech help. Now, for the next 20 or 30 minutes, the roles are switched. You now have a mentor on the other side of the table, so you can ask anything you want. And it's been amazing, because the mentees are, these amazing people who are now able to actually formally give some of their wisdom and advice back to the students. And the students absolutely love it. Here's some of the things they said. It was wonderful. I learned about acting and importance of self-expression. I learned about real friendship. Patience goes a long way in relationships. I learned more about windows and a rodeo in Wyoming. I learned more deeply about how I enjoy working one-on-one with others, how vastly different we all absorb and retain new information, and how important it can be to listen without a concern for time or outcome. Now, those are pretty interesting answers if you realize that everybody came to these workshops for technology. But it's really going way deeper than technology. Here's what another mentor said.
I think for me, like what I'm hoping to get out of each experience that I come in is to either like connect with someone or to continue to build a relationship with someone that I worked with before. So sort of what I experience when I come in is I now kind of like make my rounds. So when I like see someone I worked with in the previous month, I like go around, say hey, just catch up, maybe a quick hug, see how they're doing. Before I meet with like either like a new mentee that I haven't met before or like one that I've worked with before. So for me, I always expect to like be experiencing like some sort of connection or like some sort of like relationship building experience each time. So that's sort of like what I'm hoping to get out of. That's what I like love getting out of it. Like aside from just like this amazing exchange of like skills and advice and experience, that for me is what I'm always looking forward to and almost every time expecting.
So you can see it really is so much more than technology. These young people are saying they're looking for connection. So what we do is we take technology that is contributing as a problem to this generation gap and use it as the solution. We use it as a vehicle to create mutually beneficial, mutually empowering, mutually transformative relationships. The problem isn't that mentees need tech help or that mentors need life advice. It's that there's a separation and isolation among generations, and we need each other. Young and old have worked together in harmony forever because our knowledge, experience, and abilities are complementary. The problem is that we're allowing the roles and stereotypes that separate generations, and we're letting those things see our differences as problems instead of an opportunity. Imagine if we lived in a society where those roles and stereotypes didn't exist, living with all generations interconnected. Maybe we'd realize the power we all have when we focus on strengths instead of our differences. So, with that being said, we need your help. I'm so excited that I finally got to tell you guys more about what we do. If this interests you in any way, please come talk to me or Meryl. We need board members, we need donors, we need participants, advice, anything. I would love to talk to each and every one of you about it. My email's up there also. We also have a DU workshop coming up this weekend, but it's full, unfortunately, and our next one is going to be November 2nd, and I think Lauren will probably send out another announcement about that. Yeah, so that's all our time. I hope we have some time for questions. Thank you.
One, two. Right here. All right, Debbie, how are you?
So I might be a digilog. Is that a new term?
I like it.
Somewhere between digital and analog. But I would say I went to one of the workshops in Boulder, and I acted kind of as a mentor and a mentee. Would that make me a mentoree?
Yeah, I like it.
And I would say if you have any chance at all to get involved with this program, please do. It was the most fun I've had in a long time.
Fantastic. Hi, Chuck.
It's been a long time since I've been a CEO, but one of the things I remember was having talented people that have been in my organization, pay increase after pay increase, people that are just exactly what you want, but at some juncture are overpaid for what the new world is. And yet the legal community made it very difficult to talk about, could we modify compensation? Is there a way to give and take? Is there a way to find a new process to do that? And I don't know if we've made any progress. As I say, it's been a jillion years since I've been the CEO, and yet I suspect that dilemma is still there.
Yeah, I was going to say that might be a good question for you.
So I think there's a lot of discussion going on now about phased retirement. So for example, I worked at Pioneer Natural Resources. We had people in environmental and science and engineering. They actually went down from 40 hours plus to 32 to 20, then to project over a 5-year time period. And it worked really well. There's another company in town called Gibson Consulting. It's a recruiting firm. They focus on actually the legal counsel. And what they've done is create something called distinguished legal advisors. So these are people who are retired but kept their legal credentials. And they're signing on for part-time work, project work. They're making half of what they did before. So instead of 500 an hour, maybe it's 150 to 250. But the demand is so amazing that they're expanding it, and this is global that they're looking. So it allows them to have that mentor-mentee relationship, to train, have income for themselves, but not be committed to the job, 60 hours a week. So I think we're making some headway. And part out of desperation because unemployment is so low.
Well, I've been in a position, academic position, for most of my career, and I'm now retired, but have the ability to still go in when I want to. And as somebody who's getting up pretty far up there in age, I can say that one of the things that kind of charges my batteries and keeps me going is the interface with the younger people. We have a lot of medical students, interns, residents, young faculty, and it's really keeps you on your toes. So I think what you're doing is great. To me, it's not so much about the older, but it's about the intergenerational. And I love to be around young people and get my batteries charged. Thanks.
We actually, again, some of the people at Pioneer, that was the one thing they said they missed the most, is as they tapered down in the work commitment was the ability to connect with all the generations and share the information and knowledge and actually learn on the reverse side. So that mentoring occurs across every generation.
I'd like to shake your hand, Mac, because it's about time you met an old person.
Older person, right.
I'm only 86 and I don't have any idea how I got this far.
Yeah, congratulations to both of you. I think you're doing a wonderful thing. Now, my slide rule is a lock, duplex, decitric. Does that make me one of those analog guys? Okay, well, there I am.
You know, and thank you so much, both. But I want to make a quick comment. I just started with a new firm on the 25th of last month. And it's interesting because when I first got there, they walked me around and introduced me to everyone. And then they said, have you met Dennis and Bill yet? And I said, no. And they said, well, they don't come in till later. I said, okay. So about 9:30, I went over and saw Dennis and Bill. Dennis is 78 and Bill is 82. They lead the equity analysis group for Colorado Financial Management. Dennis is intense. I mean, this guy's amazing. And then yesterday I sat down with one of our new reps and explained to him that when I first got into the business, there was no internet. So it's a pretty diverse company, and I think there's a lot of, I love this talk. It's amazing, and it's incredibly empowering for everybody involved. So thank you so much.
I'll just add one thing. The analog natives, age does not determine whether you're in one of those camps. We've had too many times where, we've had a 23-year-old mentee who's looking for answers. We've had a 12-year-old mentor who's looking to help. And this upcoming workshop at DU, we have a 65 and a 63-year-old mentor who's going to be helping people, most likely younger than them.
Just a quick thought. It's interesting that Mental Health Center Denver has what I would consider synergistic intergenerational program up at the Dahlia Center. And there is a senior citizens facility near at hand. And of course, we're talking about people who have mental health community issues, and we're talking about young families that don't have financial support. It's amazing how successful the win-win on both sides are when you successfully interject and create interfaces between those two groups. So just a comment in a different world, but the same issue.
We have time for a couple more. Anybody else? All right. Thank you so much.
Can I just offer one more comment? So Matt mentioned older person. He had met an older person. So when we do this whole presentation on changing the narrative, it's really about ageism. Ageism is really quite prevalent. And I think there's an unconscious lack of knowledge. But there's a group called the Frameworks Institute that actually tested wording. They tested wording of senior, older person, elder. And I have to tell you that how senior rated, the picture that was created of what a senior is, it's an older person who is frail, probably partially demented. And this was tested across a very broad array of people. So they tested the wording, and older people actually had the most positive rating. So that's why the Changing the Narrative of the Frameworks Institute are really focusing on how do we change the language, because when you change the language, you change the perspective.
The ageism thing, I totally agree with. It's implicit, it's everywhere, but it's not intentional like some of the other isms. We've seen that it goes both ways. Like we have mentees come in who, are expecting to see kids that are just buried in their devices and don't care about anything else. Instead, they find people that are willing to help the people around them. So I think what really contributes to it is that there's a separation. Like there's just not that many. I bring the median age down in this room quite a bit. There's not like that many. There's not that many opportunities, and so there's a gap, and people that's I think what contributes. If we close the separation, I think we'll see a lot less ageism.
Thank you both very much. That was very informative. And when I think about what we just heard, Karen's presented a lot of very useful information to us about business, stuff we can really take. And I think about Rotary and our speakers and things that are relevant to our lives. What Matt presented is something that is so actionable, and that's another thing we're really looking for oftentimes in Rotary, and something that's actionable and so impactful for what we're looking to do in solving problems in the world. So thank you both very much for that. On behalf of the Rotary, on behalf of your speaking here today, the Rotary Club of Denver has made a contribution to end polio now. I think actually polio plus now. Mom, do you want to correct me on that? Yeah. Polio plus, and 100 children for each of you will be inoculated from polio. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Matt. It's just fun having my mom in the audience, and every now and then. Yeah.